Okay. So tonight's speaker is Cory Crowley, who works here at Skyhook. He's going to be talking to us about advanced guide to actions and filters. Actions filters allow developers to easily hook into WordPress, as you know, add their own code, and change what WordPress is doing or outputting by default. But we're going to go beyond the basics tonight. Cory's the lead developer here at Skyhook, and he constantly pushes the envelope for us, delivering high-quality interactive WordPress sites. He's originally from Colorado. He calls Arizona his home. He went to some school up north who we're not sure who they are, but he's here now, and that's what matters. And we're excited to hear from him. So, without further ado, Cory Crowley.
All right. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Dallin, for not pronouncing my school. It's cool. Okay. I'm excited to be here tonight, guys. It's been a while since I've presented, and I just want to let you guys know that I love presenting, but I'm bad at preparing presentations. So tonight, just be patient. Let's learn together. I'm going to go over some basic stuff first, and because I'm not sure what I know there are some advanced guys here, but I want to make sure that our basic building blocks are covered before we jump into, doing some fun stuff with WordPress using actions and filters. But first, before we get into that, a little bit about me, expanding on what Dallin said. I am the lead developer here at WordPress.
At WordPress.
Wow. Yeah. See what I mean? I'm a lead developer here at Skyhook, and I love doing everything with WordPress. I think WordPress is a great platform to develop pretty much anything. You can develop a high-performance application, a simple blog. The range is wide, and the possibilities are vast. And I am married, my beautiful wife, Liz, and I have 3 beautiful children who I love very much. And one interesting thing about me is that I am an identical twin. So, I mean, who knows? It could be my brother up here presenting and not the actual Cory Crowley. Who knows? Who do you think, which one am I?
The better looking one.
Of course, right? But, just to mix things up a little, what do you guys think? Do we look similar?
Mm-hmm.
Which one, left or right?
Left. One in the red.
Man, you guys are good. Goatee gave it away, didn't it? Right? Anyway, well, that's enough about me. I did go to BYU, which is up north. Dallin doesn't like to pronounce it because he's an ASU fan, but whatever. And I studied information systems there. And I originally didn't want to get into development. I actually hated programming back then, but WordPress was one thing that kind of sparked my interest. And when I graduated, the jobs were a little sparse, so I ended up coming to work for Dallin.
You didn't tell me that in the interview.
It's true, I didn't. So excited to be here. Okay, let's get into it. I am very nervous. Like I said, I like presenting, but I'm horrible at presenting. So be patient with me. I'll probably shake just a little bit. I have my trusty companion, Mountain Dew, which probably doesn't help, but it sort of calms me down. So, all right. Why hooks and filters? Why did I want to speak on this topic tonight? Mainly because hooks and filters are one of the building blocks inside WordPress. WordPress, as you guys know, is open source, and it comes with a lot of cool features just right out of the box. But one thing that we all want to do, and we want to do for our clients, is we want to customize the way WordPress outputs its content, the way it looks, maybe some functionality in the admin. We want to customize all that stuff. And if you didn't know anything about WordPress and you went about customizing it, who knows, you may end up modifying WordPress core files, which we all know is a big no-no. And that's where actions and filters come. Hooks, wow, why hooks and filters? This is where WordPress hooks come into play big time inside WordPress. And we're going to go over those building blocks. So the general term hooks inside WordPress. The definition basically is hooks are places where you can add your own code or change what WordPress is doing or outputting by default. So if WordPress outputs like a title on a page, for example, we can use a hook to either change what that title is outputting, change how it's outputting. So, you know, we could change its format somehow using hooks. And there's two types of hooks inside WordPress. And the first one are called actions, and the second are filters. Those two together are what we call hooks. Each of them do different things, but they are very similar in nature, and we're going to go through the difference right now. So, what are filters? A filter inside WordPress is a hook that allows you to intercept and modify data as it's processed. So if you think about WordPress and a page outputting in your browser, and it's loading, let's say it loads the header first, it loads maybe a slider, and then your set of blog posts towards the bottom, and then the footer, right? We can use filters to modify pieces of information that's output. So if the blog post title is being output, and let's say that we want to append maybe a piece of text at the end, we can use a filter to intercept that title, modify it, and then return it so that it outputs differently in the browser. That's what a filter is. We get a piece of data, we modify it, and then we return it. Filters modify something. That's very important to remember, and the differentiating piece between filters and actions. So the reason why I want to go over filters first is because filters are actually used inside actions. And I'll show you the code later, but filters are the starting piece of modifying WordPress information. So let's go through a couple functions that filters, well, let's go through a couple filter functions. The first one and the most basic one is called add filter. This is the code for it. So it takes a couple parameters. It takes a tag as the first parameter, and this is usually some type, some type of function inside WordPress. The second parameter is the function that will be performing the modification on the tag, and this could be any name, and we'll go through an example next. The priority. So what the priority is that it's the place in which it executes. So if there are multiple filters on a blog title, for example, the priority will tell our function when to execute. So it's very important. We'll be talking more about that later. And then the accepted arguments. So when we define a function to modify this content, for example, we can accept arguments. So depending on the filter, it may give you, for example, if we're filtering the title, one of the arguments is going to be the title that we're filtering, and we'll go through that. But it can accept one as the default, but it can accept however many you want it to. Okay, the second function that deals with filters is the sister function to add filter, which is apply filters. So apply filters is similar, and it accepts a tag name. So it would be like the content, for example, a value, and this is the value that usually is filtered. And then we can pass additional variables along with the value so that you can intercept other information along with that title. The third function that comes with filters is called remove filter. This allows you to remove any type of filters that are defined inside WordPress. Let's say you don't like what a certain filter is doing, well, you can remove it. And it takes a tag name, so it could be the content. You need to define the function to remove, and this has to be verbatim to the filter that is defined. So to our previous slide, theme name filter content was the name of that filter that we defined. It has to have the same priority as well. So let's say you go through and you want to remove a filter and you don't set the same priority as that filter, it will not remove it. So the priority is very important when it comes to removing the filter. Okay, so let's go through an example, simplified example. So on a default blog in WordPress, usually an excerpt is output on the blog index page. And so here inside 2015, one of the default themes for WordPress, they define a function to filter that excerpt. So the first thing they have is 2015 excerpt more. And if you look down at the add filter, this is the excerpt more is what's being filtered. And we'll go through that in a minute. And I apologize if it's confusing. We'll take questions a little later. 2015 excerpt more will filter this more content that's passed in. So what 2015 does is it basically takes that more content and it appends a link on the end that says read more. And then it returns that link with a space and a dash. So this same filter, we could remove it if we wanted to. Let's say that we made a child theme of 2015 and we didn't like the way that it filtered that excerpt. Well, we could define, we could say in our theme, in our functions file, remove filter excerpt more 2015 excerpt more. And notice how it's the exact same name and it has the exact same priority. The default is 10. That's why there's no third argument. And so if we define this in our functions file, it will no longer output or it will no longer filter what 2015 was doing here. Okay, so that's a brief overview of filters. The next hook inside WordPress is called an action. And an action is a hook that is executed and can add new functionality at a specific point in the processing of a page. So what differs from a filter hook is that actions, they can accept anything, but they don't modify anything. They do something. So in the processing of a page from top down, let's say that your header outputs, for example. Well, you can add an action to immediately after the header outputs, you can add an action to output a slider. It doesn't necessarily receive anything in, it doesn't modify anything, but it inserts a specific piece of functionality at a certain point in the page. And WordPress gives us a ton of actions to work with at different points in the processing of a WordPress page when it outputs to the browser. So an action does something. Actions do something. So let's go through the functions that actions give us. Add action, similar to add filter, it also accepts up to 4 arguments. The first is the hook. So what are we hooking into? At what point in the processing are we hooking into? You may see a lot inside WordPress themes, WP and Q scripts. Or you may see a hook at the top of your header that says WP head. Well, inside WP head is a little hook that says, okay, at this point you can run whatever you want as long as you hook in, as long as you define the hook name in the first variable. So function add, just like inside filters. Priority, default is always 10, and then accepted arguments. So default is 1, but it can accept many as well. So the sister function to add action that directly relates to it is called do action. So this is the point where the processing actually happens. So inside WordPress, you will see these do action functions. And usually, they only have 1 argument, and that's the name of the action. So WP and Q scripts, that's the tag name. And WordPress actually provides a way for us to pass multiple arguments along with that, that name. So you can do a single argument, you can do multiple, or there's one more function that relates to do action. It's called do action ref array, which allows you to pass in arguments as an array instead of just individual ones. So the tag would be like WP head or WP and Q scripts. And then the accepted arguments can take 1 or many, or if you use do action ref array, it can accept an array of arguments or an object. Okay, so just like with filters, we also have a remove action. And this does the same thing that remove filter does. Basically, it allows you to remove an action or a certain piece of functionality that's being output at a certain place in the processing of the page. And just like filters, it has the exact same arguments. So we got to specify the tag name, got to specify the function verbatim, exactly how it's defined, and then we also have to specify the priority exactly the same. So let's go through a quick example. So inside themes, we all know that we can enqueue scripts and styles by using an action WP and Q scripts. And what WP and Q scripts does is at a certain point in the processing of the page, somewhere in the header, it will go through and look for anything that's hooked into WP and Q scripts. And in this instance, it'll call theme name add script styles. And at that point, it will enqueue a style, which does other things, but it basically ends up outputting this Google font, for example, in the header with the correct link tag with WP and Q scripts. So this is the action, and I wanted to show you this because of this do action right here. So inside WP includes script loader.php, this function runs. So WP and Q scripts, and inside that function is our do action function that says, okay, anything that's hooked into do action WP and Q scripts run at this point. And WP and Q scripts usually runs in the header and in the footer as well. So it has a little documentation in there. And we'll go over in a little bit how to find these actions inside WordPress and how to basically how to use them more easily. Like I'm defining them right now, but as we get into it, I think it'll become more clear on how they're used and at what point is each of these hooks processed. So here is the remove action for the WP and Q scripts that we called 2 slides earlier. We don't like how it's doing it. We don't want to load that Google font. Let's say we're in a child theme. We don't want to load that Google font, so we say remove action WP and Q scripts, theme name, add script style. So the exact function that's being called by WP and Q scripts, we can remove it and say we don't want to do that, so let's do something else. And then we can add our own add action at that point after we've removed it and say, okay, I'll put, you know, font awesome or something like that. You know, it could be anything. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over the definitions of what filters and what hooks are, where are these hooks inside WordPress? Basically, they're everywhere inside WordPress core. But what you may not realize is not only are they in WordPress core, but they're also in a lot of themes that are out there. So a theme or a plugin can define its own hooks or actions and filters so that you can change the default values, or you can insert additional functionality at certain points in the processing of the page. And a little later on, I'm going to take you through some popular plugins and how they add actions and filters to help you customize what they're doing. But one place that you can always refer back to is the Codex. The Codex gives you a lot of information about what hooks are defined inside WordPress and at what point are they run. So let's go through a couple links. So inside the Codex, we have links about actions that are run during a typical request. So when WordPress does a request of a web page, what actions are run top to bottom, and what can you hook into. So these links will be in the slides, and we'll refer to them later, but I just want to give you kind of a list of links, such as actions run during an admin page request, post-page attachment, category requests, comment, ping, and trackback actions, feed actions, template actions, administrative actions, dashboard, right now, widget actions. I mean, there is an action for literally everything inside WordPress that you can hook into and you can change, or you can insert additional functionality. Same with filters. The filters list is even longer. And this is not even everything that's in the Codex. This is only a select few. So you guys will have this in the slides later on. We'll refer to them generally when we go through kind of some of the demo stuff that I'm going to do. Another place that is very helpful in determining actions and filters and where they run and what plugins are hooking into actions and filters is a plugin called Query Monitor. Who in here has used Query Monitor? Who in here loves Query Monitor? You should, to me, Query Monitor, if you're having any trouble whatsoever, you should install this plugin. It will help you diagnose and figure out basically what's going on. If you're having performance problems, it'll help you figure that out. But it also aids in the hook process, because it will tell you exactly what hooks are being used and what plugins are hooking in to what actions and filters. Another place to look, and this is in addition to the Codex, is there's 2 websites called hooker.io, and there's also another one called wpseek.com. And basically what these websites do is they attempt to, and they do it very well, to give a searchable database of all the hooks and actions inside, all the actions and filters inside WordPress. And they also give you the referenced code, examples, all that good stuff. So if you're not quite understanding what's in the Codex, you can go to these websites and they'll give you a lot of information that the Codex might not. Okay, let's dig into some demos. let me just, and I'll be sitting for most of this, but I kind of wanted to take you guys through some examples of how to use actions and filters and what kind of actions and filters you can expect to see inside a theme and also inside a plugin. So let's go through. I set up a site here called hooks.dev, and this basically has a theme by Woothemes. I'm not particular to this theme or anything like that. It just has a lot of good examples of things that we can hook into. And so that's why I chose it. So let's, first of all, look at Query Monitor. So if you go to Plugins, Add New, and look for a plugin called Query Monitor by John Blackburn, this is the plugin that needs to be activated. And when it's activated, it gives you this little drop down in the admin bar that gives you a bunch of information. And we're gonna go to the front end, and inside the admin bar we have the same thing. So it gives you a lot of information, queries by caller, all that good stuff. But down here, the most interesting part for our conversation tonight is called hooks. So let's go ahead and click on that. And what's nice about Query Monitor is it shows you everything that's being loaded, every action or hook here on the left that's being loaded inside the page request. So obviously you can see there's a lot, but that's why it gives us a little drop down so that we can filter all these actions. So let's say we want to see all the actions that are run on init, which is an action inside WordPress. Over here on the right, we see all the actions that are run. And it'll tell you whether or not it's a core action or whether or not a plugin like WooCommerce is running an action on the init, init action. And init is basically at the point after all the plugins have been loaded, after all of WordPress has been loaded, that's when init runs. So a lot of things are happening, and we're not going to get into all of these functions, but I just wanted to show you kind of what Query Monitor gives you. Because let's say that for your piece of functionality that you're wanting to add, let's say that you added an init function, and you kind of want to see where it's processing. Maybe you want it to process before WooCommerce init, so you'd have to add, a priority, and this is the priority, by the way, a priority 0, or let's say you wanted to have it run before WP cron. As long as you put the priority before 10, it will run before WP cron is run. So I kind of wanted to show you that, and it gives, we can also see all the hooks for Gravity Forms that Gravity Forms is hooking into, etc. So really, really useful in just seeing overall where the hooks are being added and what functionality is running on a typical page request. Another plugin that I didn't mention in my slides, but that will help you if you want it to, is called Simply Show Hooks. And let me just activate it. It gets a little crazy, so that's why I don't have it activated. So let's show all action hooks. And so what it does is it actually shows the hooks and at what point in the page they're running, or you can hook into them at. So up here, one of the first ones is plugins loaded. At this hook is the place where all the plugins have been loaded, and it's most of the time where you should add the initialization function of your own plugin. All the new plugins have been added, and all the active plugins have been added at this point. And so at this point, you're free to then run your own functions or whatever inside your plugin. So like I said, it gets a little crazy in here, but it gives you a lot of useful information such as priority, what's being hooked in, all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and deactivate that just because, like I said, it takes up almost the whole screen. All right. Now let's go through, let's kind of look inside this theme that I've installed, which is called Storefront, and see what kind of actions it gives us. What can we add to this theme that will make it better? So I have PHP Storm open, but you can use Sublime Text. And the best thing that I found to find all the hooks inside of a specific theme is to search within the theme, and then just search add action. Yeah. No, that's not right. So with one quotation. Come on. So anyway, this kind of gives you a list of kind of where all the actions are inside this theme, and we can kind of see maybe what we want to override or hook into. So in the welcome screen inside Storefront, let's see, let's get a little different. So we see here that inside Storefront, they're using WP and Q scripts, and they're calling the function Storefront WooCommerce scripts. And of course, it's not indexed, but that's okay. So that's all the actions that are being run, but I also want to see the do action parts that I can run against. Oh, I didn't. Okay. So you'll probably notice some of these template files like archive.php, content.php, footer, header, all that good stuff. Notice these actions. So storefront before header, storefront header, before content top. I'm just going to look at the, let's see, I'm going to go to the home page, and I'm going to look at this action. So on the home page, inside the main content area, it's running an action called homepage. And at this point, multiple hooks are coming in at this point. So storefront homepage content, let's go ahead and take a look at that one. Really? Okay. So storefront homepage content is running the loop. So that's what you would typically see inside just a regular template file. But this theme has taken advantage of hooks or actions to run specific pieces of content in the processing. So it, at this point, because it is hooked into the homepage action, it's running the loop at this point, and it's getting the template part content page. So let's say that we wanted to, after storefront on sale products, we wanted to output some information. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to the functions file, and yes, I'm not using a child theme, but that's okay, because I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to uninstall this theme, etc. So let's write a function to output a phone number, let's say, because on this storefront page, typically it outputs the products, but let's say at the very bottom, we kind of want to add a call to action that says, you know, a phone number or something like that. So let's say storefront add. So at this point, I'm going to say, you know, wow, sorry. Call us at 40. I mean, just as simple as that. So we're going to add an action to home page, and we're going to give our function name add phone number. Okay, and notice that WooCommerce has been nice enough to say what priority these are at. So we want to run after storefront on sale products. So we're going to give it a priority of 70 instead of 60. So let's go back to our home page here. And I don't have any products right now, but that's okay. Should be done. Not on the home page. That's what's going on. So let's go back to pages, and let's go quick edit, home page. That would help. Okay, broad categories, on sale, and here's where our content is being output at the very, very bottom. And that specific example is throughout all of WordPress. WordPress gives very similar actions, just like this. Do action something, and let's say that we wanted to pass an argument with this action so that I could, use it somehow. So let's say, we'll just give it something. So at this point, we could say something. And let's append something. So back on this, something. I mean, that's basically as easy as it gets. And WordPress, with these actions, provides multiple things. And you can do a lot of stuff with it. So there's an action out there called pre-get posts. Has anybody heard of pre-get posts? Who can tell me what pre-get post does?
It sets your query before it gets output to the page.
Yep, that's right. It basically gives you the ability to take that, it gives you the ability to, it's actually a filter. I apologize. We'll go through that next. I apologize. But pre-get posts, very similar to an action, basically allows you to take a variable, the post object, modify it just a little bit, or add something to it, and then allow WordPress to continue its processing with that modified object. So let's go through a couple filters while we're on the topic. So I'm going to do another search here for a function called apply filters. Okay, so there's a lot in here, so let's just get something that we can modify a bit. Maybe a color. Well, sorry. What the heck? Okay. Apparently my shortcuts got reset. So let's see. Back to supply. So let's do another search for apply my filters. So let's go to this. I wanted to do this. Okay. So it gives quite a bit of filters for background colors, things like that. So default footer background color. And it accepts an argument of, so we're going to add a filter that says change footer background color. So we're not even going to return the color. We could at this point say, you know, color equals, because this color variable will be, let's see, it'll be this value. But we're going to make it black. So let's do this at the last possible point. So we're going to add 999 to it. Boom, black. That's basically how easy it is to also filter things that are being output in the processing of a page. So we learned that we can execute a function at a certain point in the page using an action, and that's what we use to output this phone number. And then we can also filter things that are default. So in this particular theme, the footer background color was that default F3, F3, F3 hex color. But we want to change it to black, so we didn't have to do anything with any of the template files or with any CSS. We just added this function, and it overrode the default color. Go ahead, Will.
I don't know if you guys have questions yet, but
Yeah, sorry.
I just thought it was interesting that they were choosing to use a PHP hook for the color and the footer.
Yes.
The default. So is there like in the customizer they keep, you know, for the layman user to just use a color picker for that? So
Yeah.
setting default only.
So in the customizer, they have a lot of stuff. For example, footer. So this is the default right now. Because we set it to black, that's the default right now. But if we change this, it'll override what we just did. See, so it's overridden now. So it's basically a way to set defaults. And then for us to override them, we can use a filter. And the same goes within WordPress. WordPress is full of default values. And we can override those default values by using a filter, or by, we can override those default values by using a filter. That's what is the difference between an action and a filter, is a filter overrides or filters something. But an action just executes a certain piece of code at a certain point. I realize that I'm running way out of time. So at this point, we could probably take some questions. There's a lot to cover with WordPress actions and filters, and I kind of wanted to give you a base of information that you can take, and you can go find out what actions and filters are inside WordPress. And then you can kind of play around, and I challenge you to do that. Take a default theme like I just did, and see how much you can change, or see at what point you can add an action for default functionality. One plugin that I didn't get to, I was going to go through a plugin as well, is a common plugin that a lot of us use called Gravity Forms. So Gravity Forms itself has a ton of actions and filters inside of it that you can override. You can change stuff. you can execute certain pieces of code. Let's say that you wanted to send a different email or call out to an API after a form submission. Well, there's an action to allow you to do that. And I wanted to get to it, but looks like I've run out of time, right?
I mean, I think these are the questions, but.
Okay,
we're not
cool.
Super hurry.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and take questions now, and then we'll, if I have to go into more, I can. So, any questions? Go ahead.
You are running on local. If WordPress is hosted somewhere, how can you put a book over there?
Are you saying what is this running? Like, how is this running?
Yeah, running on local.
Yeah,
like
local.
Running on some.
No, this is local.
Some hosting website. If WordPress is hosting somewhere, how can you put a book over there?
So you'll have to, FTP into that code on that remote server, and you'll either put that hook or filter inside your themes functions.php file.
So basically, you're coding locally and then upload the whole package over there, or
just the file that you changed.
just a file.
So let's say that I added that one hook inside that functions file. That would be the only file that I need to upload at that point. So, I mean, it just depends on what you want to change. Like, we modified a theme, but usually you should be using a child theme so you don't modify that theme directly, but you can have your own set of functions and filters and stuff like that in your child theme that will still override that information. Any other questions? Pretty straightforward, right? I hope. Because it's important. No? Okay, that's cool. Do you guys want me to go further?
I've got one.
Sure.
If you're developing, say, a theme,
Mm-hmm.
at what point do you decide to add in
Your own?
your own actions or filters? Like, how do you err on the side of giving people more freedom or less? Like, I always tend to think more places that people can hook in is better.
Yeah.
But
I tend to lean on that side as well, but I think it really depends on what you're developing. So let's say your plugin only deals with the admin, and it does something very specific. You could probably add some actions and filters, but let's say you don't want people to override that stuff. Then obviously you probably shouldn't add them, But in almost every good plugin that I've seen, actions and filters are always there to everything. I'm developing a plugin right now for advanced custom fields, and even though it will take more time to add actions and filters, I know that in the long run, developers will be grateful that I added those so that they can hook into my plugin, change some default value, or insert some functionality that they need at a certain point. So I would say almost always insert actions and filters, but I can see a point where it doesn't make sense to. Maybe you're on a time crunch or something like that, and you don't want to, or
yeah, like at what
specific to
level
the
is
client.
it? Like, why did they put all of these in here? Like, there's way too many.
I would say if it's
I guess you could run
distributed
into
to
that.
anybody, like
Yeah.
publicly, like on the WordPress repository, I would say insert them. If you're just doing it for a client, probably no need to do it. I mean, you're probably going to be the only one using that plugin. So I wouldn't take the time to like specifically insert actions and filters unless you know that later on you may need to modify those default values or something like that.
Mhm.
So I think there's a use case for both.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions, brain busters?
Based on that question you guys were just talking about, so you're building a custom theme or whatever. If you want to be good, insert all your own, actions and filters. Do you typically start with a do action, like in your thing? You say, okay, body or the footer, I'm going to do this thing, so let's put a do action and you just make up a name, and then whatever you actually want to help with, then you go do an add action.
Yep.
And that function, you write all the code that's going to be applied to that.
at that point. Yeah.
So
So,
start with a do. You kind of start with a list of do actions of where you want to do things.
yep, exactly. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever modified like WooCommerce templates. There are a ton of do actions in there, and they all have specific names, and they're usually prefixed with your plugin name or whatever. So you define all of those in certain points, and then those are the actions that people can hook into. And remember, you can pass anything to those actions. So if you want to give them a variable to do some processing off of, or something like that, you can do that. Like you can add as many variables as you want, or an array of variables if you use do action ref array. There's that function that's kind of the same function as do action. It just allows you to add arguments as an array instead of comma argument 1, comma argument 2, comma argument 3, etc. So yes, adding those actions just anywhere you want, basically, with your own custom name, and then I would document it somewhere so that they know that those are there. But it doesn't take much to do a search to see what all actions are available inside your plugin thing as well.
And then you were mentioning how a filter, is it always within an action?
No, it can be, but it's not. In fact, I wanted to show you this. The function add action. I don't know if any of you have ever looked at this. Oh, dang. It's a whole project. Okay. Here's in WP.
WP includes plugin.php.
Yeah. Yes. So, all my shortcuts disappeared for some reason. So notice that the action also has an add filter in it. So you could get even more advanced past what we've talked about here, and there's a whole set of filters of the action names. So let's say you wanted to change those action names somehow, you could do that because actions are actually filtered as well. But I think I confused some people in saying that filters, well, actions are filters. An action always does some type of processing, but inside that function where you're running your code at that specific point, you can add your own filters inside that action that other people can then hook into if they wanted to. So, I mean, you could be very Inception-like and keep inserting filters into filters into filters and into filters into filters. You know, obviously that doesn't make sense, but you could do that if you wanted to. But actions, you know, add functionality at a specific point, filters, modify data at a specific point.
Is there a reason that do you ever nest actions within actions, or does that just concept not really make sense?
You could, but you know, at a certain point you probably get confusing, and you may even run into an infinite loop at a certain point. So you got to be careful about it. But I have seen it before, where
be a do action within some other function.
Yeah. It's almost recursive-like.
Yeah.
So you call an action within an action.
But most of the time you would expect to see a apply filter within a function and then do action, right? Like if
Yeah.
action's happening,
Mhm.
you can output something and then you can apply filter within that.
Yep. So WP and Q scripts, the function WP and Q scripts, it has that do action in it. But inside whatever you hook into that do action, you could have a filter. For example, when I added my WP and Q scripts, for example, let's say I have an array of Google fonts that in Q. I could say apply filters, my theme name, Google Fonts. Well, someone later on, if they wanted to make a child theme out of my theme, they could hook into that filter and change that array of Google Fonts, even though it's being used in another action. So filters can go inside actions, actions can go inside actions, but you just got to be careful about how much you put in because of the complexity. I would say err on the simplicity side. Put filters where you think they should go, filtering whatever content, but most of the time they would go into some type of action or a function that runs on an action. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Will.
What's your opinion about how Woothemes did the homepage action there? Thought it was kind of interesting. I haven't seen that done where they got the actual loop as an action itself.
Yeah.
Like that.
You know, there's differing opinions about this.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, it depends on your code style. If you want to leverage WordPress to its full potential, then you can use actions like that. Woothemes does it pretty well. Using the do action, it basically makes their code more modular, if you think about it. Like, not everything's stuffed into one file. They use the do action so that they can add multiple pieces of functionality in different functions without repeating themselves. So they could put that do action on another page template and have those same actions run, you know? So if you like modularity, you like organizing your code, actions are great for that. It's basically almost the same thing as an include or a require in PHP, except for do action. I mean, the do action piece gives you that ability to run a piece of functionality at a certain point, just like an include would. You know, you'd include a file that has a set of functions that run, you know, or are included. I mean, you could do that as well. So I think it depends on your code style. Me personally, I love it. I like that way, but some people don't. And even inside, you know, our company, we have different opinions about that. So.
How do you, outside of using a functions file, how do you organize all of your hooks and all of your hooks?
You know, that's a good question. You can do it a lot of ways. I typically, like Woothemes, likes to do it very much like, they usually define like a hooks file that contains all of their actions, even though these functions are somewhere else, like they're in an include file. Like they define all their functions relating to titles in one file, but then they define all their actions in another. Me personally, I like to keep the action as close to the function as possible. Just easier to find, personally. I'm not a big fan of how they do it here, but I can see where it makes sense in certain situations. In a plugin, I almost always keep it next to the function. Good question. Anybody else? Yeah.
Excuse me, the priority, they all get jammed in with like the same number. Is it when they're situated in a way to be executed? Are they just all first come, first serve?
Pretty much. There's a way, and I wish we had time to kind of go into this. There's a way to, let's say that you have 5 functions at priority 10, but you want your priority 10 function to run, well, like that 0 priority, for example. I mean, you can't get before 0.
Yeah.
You know, how do you change the order? Well, there's a global variable called WP filter, WP_filter, that basically has an associative array of all those filters. And there's a way for you to modify that so that your function can technically run before that 0 init function. There's not many situations where you want that, but because all the functions that run at 10, the default, usually they don't care about order. They just want it to run at some point. But setting a priority like 999 or something like that, so you want it to run after everything. you could go as high as you want. But I could see a situation where you want it to run before everything, and you would have to modify the WP filter global at that point to make it run. Go ahead.
I know you mentioned the gravity forms, and I've used that a lot with gravity forms too. But what's one of the other top plugins that you've used the most for hooks?
So we use a lot of plugins, and a lot of times we don't need to modify the functionality of those plugins, but the plugins that I have to modify the most, the first one that comes to mind is WooCommerce. I always have to modify stuff in WooCommerce, just because I don't like a lot of the default stuff that comes out of WooCommerce. Gravity Forms is another one. Advanced Custom Fields is a big one. They have a ton of actions and filters in there that you can modify little bits of information in the admin. So let's say you define like a relationship field that has a label inside that relationship field, and it filters by taxonomy. Let's say you don't want it to say search taxonomies. Let's say you want it to say search books or something like that. There's a filter to change that label of that dropdown so that it no longer says select taxonomies, it says select books. So Advanced Custom Fields is one, Gravity Forms is another, WooCommerce. Easy Digital Downloads has a ton of hooks that allow you to really modify and customize it. The list goes on, but any of the big plugins and the quality plugins almost always have hooks and filters for you to modify. Good question. Okay. Anybody else? If not, it's cool. That's it. Thank you for listening.